The gym hall smelled faintly of wooden floors and old sweat. Students moved in steady rhythm, following the voice of their instructor. White uniforms flashed as they practiced kicks and punches in perfect order. Among them was Ravi, a young man with a sharp face and a proud heart. He wore a black belt tied tightly around his waist, the symbol of years of training and hard work. To Ravi, martial arts was more than exercise, it was a way to show his strength. He liked the respect it brought. When he entered the hall, students looked at him with admiration. He had won tournaments, collected medals, and enjoyed the praise. Yet, sometimes, pride made him careless. That afternoon, after the class ended, Ravi stayed behind. He stretched lazily on the mat, showing off a few strong kicks even though no one had asked. A few younger students sat nearby, whispering and watching. Ravi enjoyed the attention. Then, the door at the far end of the hall opened. A man walked in, carrying a mop and a small bucket of water. His uniform was not white like theirs, it was a faded blue shirt with sleeves rolled up, and simple gray trousers. His skin was dark, his hands rough from years of work. His name was Thomas, the janitor of the training center. Thomas moved quietly, as he always did. He did not disturb anyone. His steps were slow but steady as he dipped the mop and began to clean the corner of the hall. Most people barely noticed him. Students often left without even saying hello. But Thomas never complained. He cleaned every corner with care, as if the floor itself deserved respect. Ravi smirked when he saw him. For a reason he himself did not understand, he felt the need to speak loudly in front of the younger students. "Look," Ravi said, "the janitor has come. He must have seen my kicks. Maybe he wants to learn." The younger boys laughed softly. Thomas did not look up. He kept moving the mop, his eyes calm and fixed on his work. Something inside Ravi wanted more. Perhaps it was boredom, perhaps pride. He stood up, tied his belt again, and called across the hall. "Hey, Thomas," he said with a grin. "Do you know anything about fighting?" The janitor paused. His back was still turned, but his hands rested on the mop. For a moment, the hall was silent. The younger boys stopped laughing and waited. Finally, Thomas turned his head slightly and said in a quiet, steady voice, "Why do you ask?" Ravi's grin grew wider. He wanted to impress the younger students, to show that he was not only strong but also fearless. "Because I want to see if you can fight me." "Just for fun," Ravi said. "One round." "What do you say?" The boys gasped. A few of them whispered to each other, excitement dancing in their voices. To them, it was almost funny, the idea of a janitor fighting a black belt champion. Thomas straightened slowly. He leaned the mop against the wall and turned fully toward Ravi. His eyes were deep, calm, and unreadable. He did not look angry. He did not even look surprised. Instead, there was something in his face that none of the boys could understand, something quiet, something strong. Ravi waited for laughter, or maybe nervous refusal. He expected Thomas to wave his hands and say, "No, no, I am too old for that." But Thomas only asked one question. "And what do you wish to prove, young man?" Ravi blinked. He had not thought about that. The question felt heavier than it should have. Still, with the younger boys watching, he could not back down. "To prove that skill matters," Ravi said quickly. "That a black belt means something." Thomas's eyes stayed on him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the janitor gave a small nod. "Very well," he said. "If it will help you, I will fight you." The boys could not believe what they had heard. Their mouths opened in shock. Ravi himself was caught off guard. He had expected Thomas to refuse, not to accept with such calmness. Suddenly, the air in the hall felt different. The younger boys whispered excitedly, their voices rising like sparks. Ravi's heart beat faster, though he did not show it. He laughed loudly, trying to cover his own surprise. Good. Then tomorrow, after class, we will have our match. Thomas gave no smile, no boast, no sign of fear. He simply picked up the mop again, dipped it in water, and went back to cleaning. It was as if the conversation had ended for him. But for Ravi and the younger boys, it had only just begun. That night, Ravi walked home with his head high. He imagined how easily the match would go. A janitor? He thought. What could he possibly know about martial arts? Tomorrow everyone will see the difference between a champion and a cleaner. Yet, in a small corner of his mind, the janitor's calm face returned again and again. There had been no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. Only quiet strength. Ravi shook the thought away and prepared himself for the next day. But what he did not know was that tomorrow's fight would not only surprise him, but it would silence everyone who witnessed it. The next morning, the training center buzzed with quiet excitement. Usually, students came in with minds focused on drills and discipline. But today was different. A secret had spread quickly. Ravi, the black belt, had challenged Thomas, the janitor, to a fight. The younger students whispered about it while tying their belts. Some giggled, imagining how quickly Ravi would win. Others frowned, unsure if it was right. Yet nobody dared to speak loudly, because the idea itself felt unusual. Ravi walked in with his usual confidence, but inside he was restless. He had dreamed of the moment all night. In his mind, he saw himself standing tall while Thomas gave up. The boys would cheer, and his pride would shine brighter than ever. Still, a tiny question stayed in his chest: why had Thomas accepted so easily? The instructor, Mr. Kumar, noticed the strange energy in the hall. He was a tall man with a calm face and wise eyes. For years, he had taught students not only the moves of martial arts but also its heart discipline, patience, and respect. He watched the students whispering and glanced at Ravi, who avoided his eyes. Mr. Kumar said nothing, but deep inside, he felt that something unusual was about to happen. After the morning session ended, Ravi stretched on the mat, waiting. The younger boys gathered in small groups, pretending to stay behind for extra practice. Their eyes kept moving toward the door. Everyone was waiting for Thomas. At last, the door opened. The familiar sound of a mop bucket's wheels rolled gently on the floor. Thomas entered as always, wearing his faded blue shirt and gray trousers. His calm steps made it seem as if nothing special was about to happen. He nodded politely to Mr. Kumar and began to set his things down. The boys grew restless. Ravi stood and called across the hall, his voice louder than needed. Thomas. Are you ready? The janitor looked up slowly. His eyes carried the same quiet strength as yesterday. He placed the mop aside, folded his sleeves neatly, and walked toward the mat. The whispers grew louder behind Ravi. Is he really going to do it? This will be over in seconds. I can't believe a janitor is stepping on the mat. Thomas stopped at the edge of the mat and bowed slightly. His movements were simple, but there was dignity in them. Ravi copied the bow, though with a grin tugging at his lips. Mr. Kumar stepped closer, folding his arms. What is happening here? His voice carried authority, and the students fell silent at once. Ravi cleared his throat. Sir, this is just a friendly match. I challenged Thomas. Only for fun. Mr. Kumar's eyes narrowed slightly. He turned to Thomas. And you agreed? Thomas gave a small nod. Yes, if it will help him. The instructor's face softened, though he did not hide his concern. Very well. But remember, martial arts is not about showing power. It is about respect. Do not forget that. Both Ravi and Thomas nodded. With that, Mr. Kumar stepped aside, though he stayed close, ready to stop things if needed. The boys leaned forward eagerly, their hearts racing. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone expected Ravi to launch forward with his sharp kicks. Everyone expected Thomas to stumble, to fall, to surrender. But when Ravi moved into his stance, something unexpected happened. Thomas did not copy him. He did not raise his fists or bend his knees. He simply stood tall, arms resting at his sides, breathing slowly, as if the entire moment was nothing unusual. Ravi frowned. "Aren't you going to take a stance?" Thomas shook his head gently. "A fight does not always begin with raised fists. Show me what you wish to show." The words puzzled Ravi. He tried to shake them off. With quick energy, he stepped forward, testing with a light punch aimed near Thomas's shoulder. He expected the janitor to flinch. But Thomas did not move. His eyes remained calm, and his body still. Ravi pulled back his fist, uncertain. He tried again with a faster motion. This time, Thomas shifted slightly, not blocking, not striking, just moving enough that Ravi's hand cut through empty air. It was smooth, almost like a breeze had carried him away. The boys gasped. Ravi blinked, trying to hide his surprise. He launched another attack, quicker and sharper. Again, Thomas moved only enough to avoid it, as if he already knew where Ravi's fist would land. His steps were light, his breathing steady. It was not the fight anyone expected. Ravi was the one sweating, the one chasing, while Thomas barely moved yet never got touched. The boys whispered louder now, their earlier laughter fading into confusion. Ravi's pride burned inside him. He had wanted an easy win, but now, every strike made him look less certain. His kicks sliced the air, his punches hit nothing. Thomas remained calm, silent, untouchable. Finally, Ravi stopped, panting. He glared at the janitor. "Why don't you fight back?" he demanded. Thomas's voice was soft but carried across the hall. "Because fighting is not about hurting. It is about understanding. You wish to prove yourself. But I do not need to prove anything." The words settled heavily over the room. The boys fell completely silent. Even Mr. Kumar's stern eyes softened, as if he understood something deeper. Ravi clenched his fists, torn between anger and confusion. No matter how skilled he was, he could not make Thomas look weak. Instead, the janitor's stillness made Ravi's movements look restless, almost childish. The match was not over, yet already the atmosphere had shifted. Everyone watching felt it. The fight was not going the way they imagined. And deep inside, Ravi felt something he had not expected: doubt. The hall was still. The sound of Ravi's heavy breathing echoed against the walls. Sweat rolled down his face as he stood on the mat, fists clenched tightly. Across from him, Thomas stood calm and steady, like a tree rooted deeply in the ground. His shirt was old, his trousers plain, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. The younger boys no longer laughed. Their wide eyes followed every movement, every breath. They had expected to cheer for Ravi, but instead, they were silent, confused, even a little amazed. Ravi felt his pride stinging. He had trained for years, won medals, and earned the black belt around his waist. Yet this man, a janitor who never even wore a uniform, was making him look powerless. Ravi's punches and kicks cut only through air, while Thomas never seemed rushed, never even seemed tired. Finally, Ravi shouted, "Stop dodging. Fight me properly." Thomas's eyes softened. He tilted his head slightly and said, "You believe fighting is only about striking. But fighting is also about control. If you cannot control yourself, how will you control the fight?" The words hit Ravi harder than any punch. For a moment, his anger boiled, but deep inside, something stirred: confusion, maybe even respect. Mr. Kumar, the instructor, stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Enough for now. But Thomas raised his hand gently. "Let him continue, sir. This is his lesson as much as mine." Mr. Kumar studied Thomas's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Ravi tightened his fists again. He wanted to prove himself, to erase the doubt forming in the eyes of the younger boys. He rushed forward with a quick combination of moves. His foot swept low, his fist came high, but Thomas moved as if he had seen it all before. With one step, one turn of his shoulder, he avoided both strikes. And then, for the first time, Thomas raised his hand. But it was not to strike. He simply placed his palm gently against Ravi's chest, steady but firm, stopping him in his tracks. It was not painful, not even rough. Yet it felt powerful enough to freeze Ravi where he stood. The boys gasped softly. Ravi froze, his eyes wide. "Do you see?" Thomas said quietly. "Strength is not always about force. Sometimes, strength is about knowing when to stop." Ravi stepped back, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He looked at Thomas with a mix of anger, embarrassment, and something else he had not expected: curiosity. "Who are you?" Ravi asked, almost whispering. Thomas smiled faintly. "I am just a janitor." But Mr. Kumar, who had been watching carefully, finally spoke. "Not just a janitor." His eyes were fixed on Thomas with a strange recognition. "I remember now. Years ago, there was a man who trained in silence, who never cared for medals or belts. He was known for his patience, his discipline. His name was Thomas." The students turned in surprise. Ravi blinked. "You mean, he was a fighter?" Thomas lowered his eyes. "Once. Long ago. But I learned that true strength is not shown in competition. It is shown in how you live, how you treat others, and how you control yourself." The hall grew completely silent. The boys looked at Thomas with new eyes. They no longer saw just the man with a mop. They saw someone different, someone who carried a hidden strength that was deeper than punches or kicks. Ravi's throat tightened. For the first time, he felt unsure of his own belt, his own pride. He had wanted to prove that he was greater, but now it felt as though he had been the one taught a lesson. Thomas looked directly at him. "Ravi, your skills are sharp. Your body is strong. But your spirit, it is restless. Until you calm your spirit, your strength will always be incomplete." The words echoed in Ravi's mind. His fist slowly opened. His shoulders lowered. The anger inside him softened into something else: respect, maybe even shame. The boys whispered again, but this time it was different. "He's not just a janitor, he's stronger than anyone here. Did you see how calm he was?" Ravi heard their voices, and his chest ached. He had wanted them to cheer for him, but now they admired Thomas instead. Yet strangely, Ravi could not feel angry anymore. Something deep inside told him this was the truth he needed to face. Mr. Kumar finally stepped forward again. "That is enough for today. The lesson has been given." Thomas bowed his head respectfully, then quietly walked back to pick up his mop. He dipped it in the water bucket and began cleaning, just as if nothing unusual had happened. His movements were the same: calm, steady, humble. But the atmosphere in the hall was completely changed. Every student who watched knew they had seen something they would never forget. And Ravi, standing there with sweat on his face and doubt in his heart, realized that tomorrow would not be like yesterday. Something inside him had shifted, though he did not yet know what it meant. The fight was over, but the lesson had only begun. The training hall was quiet again, but the silence was not the same as before. It was heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. Ravi stood still on the mat, his black belt tied firmly around his waist, but for the first time, it felt strangely loose. He had always worn it with pride, like a crown. Yet now, after facing Thomas, it felt less like a symbol of victory and more like a question he could not answer. Thomas continued to mop the floor with calm hands. His steps were slow and steady, each movement neat and careful. To anyone passing by, it might have looked ordinary, but to the students who had just seen him move on the mat, every stroke of the mop carried a kind of grace, a quiet discipline. The younger boys sat in the corner, whispering among themselves. They no longer spoke with laughter, but with wonder. Did you see how he moved? It was like he already knew where Ravi would strike. He didn't even fight back, and still, he won. Their words stung Ravi more than any bruise. He clenched his fists, then quickly released them, remembering Thomas's gentle hand on his chest. That one small touch had stopped him completely. No strike, no force, only control. Mr. Kumar approached Ravi. His face was serious, but his voice was calm. Ravi, do you understand what happened today? Ravi lowered his head. I lost. The instructor shook his head slowly. No. You did not lose. You learned. And that is more important than victory. Ravi swallowed hard. The words felt true, yet painful. He wanted to argue, but his heart knew better. He looked across the hall at Thomas, who quietly wrung the mop and continued cleaning, as if the world outside him did not exist. That night, Ravi could not sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing Thomas's voice in his mind. Until you calm your spirit, your strength will always be incomplete. The words echoed like a drum beat inside him. For the first time, Ravi wondered if his black belt truly meant what he thought it did. The next day at practice, Ravi was different. His kicks were sharp, his punches strong, but his spirit was restless. He moved with force but without calmness. He noticed it himself. The more he tried to prove his strength, the emptier it felt. When class ended, Ravi stayed behind again. The mop bucket rolled softly across the floor as Thomas entered, just as he always did. Ravi hesitated for a moment, then walked toward him. Thomas, he said quietly. The janitor looked up, his calm eyes meeting Ravi's. Yes. Ravi took a deep breath. Teach me. Thomas tilted his head. You already have a teacher. I mean, Ravi said quickly, teach me what you know. Yesterday, you didn't fight, but you still defeated me. How? I want to understand. Thomas studied him carefully. He saw the pride still burning in Ravi's eyes, but beneath it, there was something new: sincerity. He set the mop aside and folded his arms. Very well, Thomas said slowly. But you must understand. What I can show you is not about winning matches. It is about knowing yourself. Ravi nodded eagerly, though he did not fully understand. Thomas motioned for him to stand on the mat again. Attack me, he said simply. Ravi stepped forward with a careful punch. Thomas shifted slightly, just as before, and the strike missed. Again, Thomas said. Ravi tried a kick. Thomas moved aside with the same quiet ease. Again. Ravi launched a series of strikes, but each one cut through empty air. His breaths grew heavy, his movements sharper, but Thomas never looked rushed. His eyes stayed calm, his body moved only as much as needed. Finally, Ravi stopped, panting. You always know where I'll go, he said, frustrated. Thomas shook his head. No, I only know myself. I know how to be still. When you are restless, you reveal your path before you take it. Your body speaks louder than your fists. Ravi frowned, trying to absorb the meaning. Thomas stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Ravi's shoulder. Calm your spirit, and you will see more than just the fight. You will see the person in front of you. The words sank deep into Ravi's heart. For the first time, he realized that his movements had always been loud, not just physically, but in spirit. He had been shouting for attention with every strike, every kick, every step. That day, Ravi did not leave with pride in his chest. Instead, he left with questions about himself, about strength, about the meaning of martial arts. And the whispers in the hall did not fade. The students who had seen the match carried the story with them. Each time they practiced, they glanced at Thomas with quiet respect. The janitor never asked for attention. He simply kept cleaning, moving the mop across the floor with the same patience as before. Yet to the students, each movement looked like part of a lesson they had not yet learned. And Ravi knew deep inside this was only the beginning of his true training. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Ravi's match with Thomas spread quietly among the students. At first, they whispered in secret, sharing the surprise that a janitor had outmatched a black belt. But as time passed, their whispers turned into respect. Whenever Thomas walked in with his mop and bucket, the boys no longer looked away. Instead, they watched him, waiting for some quiet wisdom hidden in his calm steps. For Ravi, those weeks were not easy. His pride had been shaken, and every time he tied his black belt, he remembered Thomas's words, "Until you calm your spirit, your strength will always be incomplete." During practice, Ravi worked harder than ever. His punches were fast, his kicks sharp, yet his heart felt restless. No matter how perfect his moves looked, something inside him was unsettled. He wanted to understand what Thomas had meant. One evening, after most students had left, Ravi stayed behind again. The hall was nearly empty when the familiar sound of wheels rolled across the floor. Thomas entered with his mop and bucket, just as always. Ravi walked up to him, hesitating before speaking. "Thomas, can I train with you again today?" Thomas looked at him, then at the mop in his hand. He gave a small nod. "Very well. But remember, training with me is not only about strikes. Are you ready for that?" Ravi nodded firmly, though he was unsure what it meant. This time, Thomas did not ask Ravi to attack. Instead, he placed the mop in Ravi's hands. Ravi looked at it in surprise. "You want me to clean?" "Yes," Thomas said simply. "Start here. Do it slowly. Do it carefully." Ravi frowned, but he obeyed. He dipped the mop into the bucket and began to clean. At first, his movements were quick, almost impatient. But Thomas stopped him. "Not like that. Feel the floor. Move with patience. Each stroke should be complete, not rushed." Ravi tried again, this time moving slower. He felt strange, embarrassed even, but Thomas's steady eyes watched him without judgment. For nearly half an hour, Ravi mopped the floor in silence. His arms grew tired, and his back ached. But as the minutes passed, something unexpected happened. His mind grew quiet. There were no medals to win, no students to impress. There was only the steady motion of the mop, the sound of water gliding across the wooden floor, the simple rhythm of breath and movement. When Ravi finally stopped, sweat covered his forehead. He looked at Thomas, confused. "What does this have to do with fighting?" Thomas smiled faintly. "Everything. Discipline is not only on the mat. If you can move with patience here, if you can calm your mind in the simplest task, then you can begin to calm your spirit in greater tasks. A restless heart will show in everything you do." Ravi was silent. The lesson felt strange, but deep inside, he knew it was true. Over the next days, Thomas gave him more tasks. Sometimes it was mopping. Sometimes it was sweeping, or arranging the mats neatly, or even carrying buckets of water. To others, it looked like Ravi was only helping the janitor. But Ravi began to notice changes within himself. The tasks forced him to slow down. They forced him to pay attention to small details. And slowly, the restlessness in his spirit began to soften. One afternoon, while Ravi was stacking mats, one of the younger boys asked curiously, "Why are you helping the janitor?" Ravi looked at the boy and said quietly, "Because he's teaching me more than anyone else." The boy blinked in surprise. He glanced at Thomas, who was quietly wiping the windows. For the first time, the boy saw him not as a janitor, but as a teacher. Meanwhile, Ravi's behavior in class began to change. He no longer showed off after practice. He no longer laughed at the younger students' mistakes. Instead, he corrected them gently, with patience. Even Mr. Kumar noticed the difference. One day after practice, the instructor pulled Ravi aside. "You have become quieter," Mr. Kumar said. "More focused. What has changed?" Ravi thought for a moment before replying, "Thomas has been teaching me." Mr. Kumar's lips curved into a small smile. "Ah. I see. Then you are finally beginning to understand." Ravi nodded slowly. That evening, when the hall was nearly empty, Ravi sat on the mat with Thomas. The janitor's face was calm as always, his eyes steady. "Thomas," Ravi said softly, "why do you still mop the floors? If you were such a strong fighter, why didn't you continue? You could have been famous." Thomas looked at the mop beside him, then at the shining floor. "Because fame fades. Medals gather dust. But peace stays with you. I found peace in simple work, in discipline, in helping quietly. Strength without peace is empty." The words touched Ravi's heart deeply. For the first time, he felt tears prick his eyes, though he quickly blinked them away. He understood now that what Thomas carried was greater than belts or medals, it was wisdom. And in that moment, Ravi realized something he had never known before: true victory was not about defeating others. It was about defeating the restlessness inside yourself. The weeks passed, and Ravi's life began to change in ways he never expected. He still trained every morning, but his movements were no longer rushed or proud. He practiced with patience, breathing with focus, his strikes sharper because his spirit was calmer. The younger students noticed. Some whispered that Ravi had become different, less proud, more steady. But what they did not know was that after each class, Ravi stayed behind to learn from Thomas. Sometimes it was mopping, sometimes stacking mats, sometimes sitting in silence. And though it looked simple, each task carried a lesson. Ravi had learned to quiet his restless heart. Yet there was one question that remained inside him like a small flame: who was Thomas, really? One evening, after practice, Ravi found the courage to ask. The hall was empty except for them. Ravi sat on the mat, while Thomas slowly cleaned the far corner. "Thomas," Ravi began softly, "you told me once that you were a fighter long ago. What happened? Why did you stop?" For the first time, Thomas paused in his work. He leaned on the mop, his eyes distant, as though he was looking at a place far away. A long silence followed before he spoke. "Many years ago," Thomas said slowly, "I was much like you. I was young, strong, and hungry to prove myself. I trained harder than anyone. I entered competitions, won medals, and earned belts. People cheered for me. They said I was destined to be great." Ravi leaned forward, his heart racing. Thomas continued, "But the more I won, the less peace I felt. I became restless, proud, always needing the next victory to feel strong. My body grew sharp, but my spirit grew weak. One day, I met a teacher who showed me what I was missing. He defeated me without striking, just as I did with you. And he told me something I never forgot: a true fighter is not one who defeats others, but one who defeats himself." Ravi's breath caught. The words felt heavy, just as they had the first time Thomas had stopped him with a gentle hand. "So what did you do?" Ravi asked quietly. Thomas's eyes softened. "I walked away. I stopped chasing medals. I chose a simpler life, one where every day was training, not of the body, but of the heart. Cleaning floors, carrying water, moving slowly and carefully. At first, people laughed. They said I had wasted my talent. But I found something greater than applause. I found peace. Ravi sat in silence. The image of a younger Thomas, once proud and restless like himself, struck him deeply. He realized that the man before him was not weak at all. He was stronger than anyone Ravi had ever known, not because of his kicks or punches, but because of his calm spirit. "Do you regret it?" Ravi finally asked. Thomas shook his head gently. "No. If I had chased fame, maybe my name would be known. But peace is greater than fame. And now, when I see someone like you, someone with fire in his heart, I know why I walked this path. To pass on the lesson that was once given to me." Ravi's chest tightened. He bowed his head, ashamed of how he had once mocked Thomas. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "That day, when I challenged you, I only wanted to prove myself." Thomas smiled faintly. "Do not be sorry. That moment was your beginning. Without it, you would not be here now." The words lifted something heavy from Ravi's heart. Just then, Mr. Kumar entered the hall. He had listened quietly to part of their talk. His face was calm, but his eyes were filled with respect. He stepped forward. "Thomas," Mr. Kumar said softly, "I knew I had seen your movements before. Years ago, I watched you fight. You were different even then. I did not know you had chosen this life, but now I understand." Thomas bowed slightly. "We all choose our paths, sir. This one gave me peace." Mr. Kumar nodded, then turned to Ravi. "Do you see now? The belt you wear is not the final lesson. It is only the beginning. The deeper lessons are found not in strength, but in humility." Ravi bowed deeply to both of them, his heart filled with something new: respect, gratitude, and determination. That night, when Ravi walked home, the city lights looked different. He no longer thought of medals or applause. He thought of the quiet strength Thomas carried, the strength of someone who no longer needed to prove himself. And for the first time in his life, Ravi felt that he, too, wanted to walk a path not of pride, but of peace. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the training hall. Ravi entered with quiet steps, his black belt tied neatly, his chest steady. Today, the hall felt different. He carried not the weight of pride, but the calm of understanding. The students already inside whispered softly among themselves, glancing at him with curiosity. Thomas was there too, mopping the floor as always. His movements were steady, almost hypnotic in their simplicity. The younger students watched him with awe, but no one spoke. It was as if the hall itself held its breath, waiting for something important to happen. Ravi walked to Thomas and bowed deeply. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." Thomas looked at him, his calm eyes gentle. "You have learned well, Ravi. But remember, learning never ends. The true test is how you live outside these walls." Ravi nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known before. For the first time, he understood that strength was not in showing off or winning fights, but in controlling oneself, respecting others, and finding peace within. Mr. Kumar, the instructor, stepped forward and addressed the group. "Today," he said, his voice calm but firm, "you are not here to witness a match. You are here to witness a lesson, one of patience, humility, and true strength." The students leaned forward, curious and silent. Ravi realized that their eyes were no longer on him, but on Thomas. The janitor who had once been invisible was now at the center of their attention. Thomas paused in his work and looked around the hall. "Many people judge others by appearance, by titles, or by belts," he said. "But the real measure of a person is unseen. It is in how they carry themselves, how they respect others, and how they face life's challenges quietly, without needing to prove themselves." The students were quiet, absorbing each word. Ravi could see the truth of it in their faces, the surprise, the wonder, and the respect. Then Thomas smiled faintly. Ravi, do you remember the first day you challenged me? Ravi nodded. Yes. I thought it would be easy to show my strength. Thomas placed a hand lightly on Ravi's shoulder. And what did you learn? Ravi took a deep breath. I learned that strength is more than muscles or metals. It's about controlling yourself, being patient, and understanding others. And it's about respect. The hall fell completely silent. The students exchanged glances. They had come expecting excitement, maybe a small fight, but instead, they had witnessed something far greater, a lesson in life itself. One of the younger students, a boy named Arjun, finally spoke. I didn't realize before. I thought strength was about fighting. But now I see, it's about being calm, patient, and humble. Thomas nodded. Exactly. True strength is quiet. It does not need to shout. It does not need applause. And it does not fear being underestimated. Ravi looked around the hall. Every student was listening, every pair of eyes fixed on Thomas. Even Mr. Kumar, who had seen many champions and many teachers, looked moved. Thomas returned to his mop, moving gently across the floor. But the air in the hall was charged with something new. It was not competition. It was respect. Quiet, deep, and lasting. Ravi knelt beside him, picking up a small rag to help. The younger boys joined too, each wanting to be part of something greater than themselves. Together, they cleaned the hall, moving slowly and carefully, following the rhythm Thomas had taught them, not for show, not for medals, but for the lesson itself. And in that moment, the hall was filled with silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of understanding, of hearts touched and minds opened. Ravi realized something powerful. He had come seeking to prove himself, to show his strength. But in truth, the real victory had been Thomas's all along. Not because he had fought with fists, but because he had fought with wisdom, patience, and a quiet heart. The students would never forget that day. And neither would Ravi. He had learned that life was not a fight to be won in front of others, but a journey to be mastered quietly, every single day. As the sun set and the hall emptied, Ravi looked at Thomas one last time. I understand now, he said softly. I will never forget what you've taught me. Thomas smiled, his eyes calm and proud. And that, Ravi, is all I ever hoped for. The hall fell silent once more, but this time it was different. It was not empty. It was full of respect, gratitude, and the quiet strength that only true understanding could bring. And in that silence, everyone knew, the janitor who had been underestimated had taught the greatest lesson of all.